Great. Yeah, so welcome to eRIS. I think it's been a little while since we've done one, maybe late last year or mid last year, and then we had the partner conference at the end of the year. So it's been a little bit of time coming. So we have a few new cool things to kind of go over and talk about. I think we might have touched on the user tagging at the conference, but no point, or we can definitely reiterate some of that stuff as we go forward. So I'm going to touch mostly in on the new lockout tagout feature that was developed with Toronto probably late last year and kind of been rolling out a little bit more this year. Maybe it was this year. And there's a few other views that we've created, just some information tools to help collect data more on a system administrator level. And then there's a few more logbook improvements, which always seem to kind of make it into these what's new in eRIS sessions, a few logbook things. So I'll go to the next page. So with Toronto, and I think some other clients have mentioned this before, or partners have mentioned this before, lockout tagout, to have some sort of feature to track the lockout tagout procedures, to secure equipment, and to have an audit trail on some of the actions that are being taken on the equipment from within eRIS itself. Since eRIS can connect to a lot of different data sources, some partners have expressed interest in having some of this done within the eRIS system. So with lockout tagout, we've created two concepts or two kind of definitions that kind of stand out, and that would be an event and a lock. I'm going to start with locks just so I can explain events after. But so a lock is placed on an asset to prevent an asset from being used, and a lock has a locked or unlocked status itself. It can contain custom fields, and this can be customized to whatever fields that you as a partner feel are important to a lock. It doesn't have to be what I show here in this demonstration, and it can be more than just one or two items. It can be any kind of number of fields that might be applied to a lock specifically. So in Toronto's case, and most of these screenshots, the two custom fields that they are using are lockout point and work order. So those two fields look like they're kind of baked into the system, but they're actually customizable based off of how you can configure a lock. And I'll show you how to get into that too as we move a little bit ahead. Locks can also have attachments. Those could be any kind of file, could be a picture of the equipment, could be a Word document talking about the work being done, or a how-to guide on the piece of equipment, or just a status update. So that's kind of what a lock looks like that the users will be interacting with. An event is essentially just a collection of locks, just maybe one global kind of maintenance work that's being done, and you have to lock out a bunch of different individual assets. So these events kind of contain the assets and the locks that are being applied for this given task or work order that's been kind of being executed. Within an event, an asset can have one or many locks apply to it. So you can lock down a asset twice and put two different types of locks on an asset within an event. So while the views that we're kind of looking at off the bat will be by events, and a lot of the UI I'll focus on is events, you can look at locks separate from events, but under the core data structure, a lock is tied to an event. The other definition or part of the lockout tagout system from within eRIS is an event template. And this is kind of how events are configured. So this is where you'll be creating and setting permissions on who can actually create locks and events within a given template, who can view, who can only view those. We can also set up where those assets that are being used from within this event template are being retrieved from, what table, what system are they being ingested from, and then also the lock settings. So this is where we can kind of configure the additional kind of lock options, whether that be a lockout point or work orders or any other kind of custom field that you have, maybe a different kind of area that the lock can exist on. There is also history built into a lot of how the lockout tagout works. So history is collected on both an event, an asset, and a lock. So you can see history based off of one given event that you're kind of zeroing in on. You can look at history based off of a certain asset to see what kind of actions or work has been applied to an individual asset, and as well as you can look at a lock itself. You can see what kind of items have been changed or modified from within a lock, and when it was first locked and when it was unlocked. So I'm going to go over to an actual demo of lockout tagout. So let's just extend my session. So as I mentioned, there's templates here, and this is just a fake template or a mock template that I've created for a lot of the work that kind of closely resembles what we've done with Toronto. But you can create many event templates. And so this can be kind of done to maybe different sites or different organizations from within your organization might have different procedures, or they might have different pieces of information that they feel is important to a lock, or there are different creators and different viewers that should be applied to different areas of the lockout tagout system. So I just kind of have a basic Lotto one. I believe Toronto, you guys are using it for different sites and different plants. So they'll all have their own template and their own kind of like permissions and fields that are associated with it. So the basic field is a name. What's the actual name of this event? And the events also do require a data provider. So this is just a new type of table provider that has been built into eRIS. This is just where the lockout, tagout event data, history data, and lock data is actually being stored. And so that's a new provider that will have to be licensed in order to be added. The second tab here is asset settings. So this is where we're getting a list of assets. So I have a table of assets called fake assets, which is just a random list of assets that I've been working with. And here you can give a asset a name, you can give an asset a description. This is all based off of where you're getting this data, and then what is the unique identifier of the asset. Then you can also select a list of display columns. So in Toronto's case, there was process, equipment, and facility. These were the important items that we wanted to display when creating a lockout event. You can also add a where clause to filter based off of a certain facility of assets. So here in this event template that I have, I will only be getting assets at the STP facility. And then lock settings is where we do configure how the locks are created and managed. So creating lock options, you have a lot of different types of options to create a lock, or what kind of input they're going to accept, whether it's a drop down, if it's just a simple text input field, or a larger text area where it's going to be more paragraphs, if they should only be inputting numbers, or if it should just be kind of like a yes or no checkbox situation. So for here, I have a lockout point, and they are allowed to select this list of values. Or they can enter a work order, and it's just a simple text field. You can also specify that these items are required or not while creating the lock itself. So you can force a work order to be applied, or you can allow it to be an optional field. These two options are also similar. These are also fields that are on the lock, and you can require a reason for the lock. You can make it optional, or you can not even give them the option. And the same goes for attachments. You can block attachments from being added to locks. You can require attachments, or you can just leave them optional. So if I move over to this page, and this is where things start to kind of come together, maybe make more sense. I can now come in here, I can look at previous events by event, or I can create new lockout events. I'm going to start by creating a new lockout event. So the first thing I get is a new wizard type UI that allows me to say facility repairs. I'm being very generic here. Repairs being done inside the facility. These two fields are required, and the estimated completion date is not required, but you can set this out to maybe when a time period that you think this work might be done. So I can actually set this out to next Saturday if I think it's done. Then over here, I'm pulling in those fake assets, or those assets that I've created my database. So here I have this whole list of assets I can actually search through. You can see that the facility is always going to be STP based off of how I had configured it within the event template. But I can also search through here. I can search for all my raw water process assets. You should be able to. Might be the space. If I just do water, maybe. That seems I got it. So here I can kind of look through, and when I'm ready to add them, I can add one or more assets to the page. I can also remove them if I've added them in error. And then once I'm kind of done, I'm happy here, I can go next. And then I'm onto the second page of the wizard. And now I have grouped into assets themselves, I can add or apply locks to an asset. So fields that are required are noted by a little star. So the reason is required based off what I configured, but the work order and lockout point are not. And so I can punch in anything here that I want. This one's faulty, etc. I can also add an attachment if I want. Find one that's not too big. I can also remove this attachment if I want to get rid of it after or before I submit it. Gonna copy my reasoning across the board. I can also change when a lock was applied. I can only go back to say that the lock was maybe applied a day ago or a little bit further back in time. I can also change the locked by. So if I'm coming in and I'm locking this out for another operator or another user from within the system, I can select a different user. I will be recorded as the user who has created this lock, even though the locked by and created by will be different fields. So there will be information to say that Jonathan Clifford selected eRIS for this lock as the locked by. I can also add an additional lock to an asset. So if I wanted to have 2 different lockout points, I can do that as well. And I can add that. Once I'm happy with this list, I can then create the event. And now I get brought into my event page. So on this screen, I can see at the top all the information about the event itself, just the brief description I did, when it started. It was created by admin, which users I'm signed in as, and it's not finished, it's not completed. And then what was the last time this event was modified? So anything changed. Then below, once again, grouped in assets themselves, I can see all the locks applied. I can also hover on here and I can get a little bit more information on the asset itself. If I just hover over it, I can see more details on the asset that I'm looking at. I can see the status is locked, marked with a nice big red icon, and all the information here. And then nothing has been unlocked, so everything has kind of stayed the same. Then below, I get a bit of a history, so all the time that I did anything and locking anything. So you can see the locked by, one of them was selected eRIS, unless I didn't do that right, but one of these should be locked by eRIS. So you can also view lockout events or locks by asset. So if I can switch to asset, I'm going to get a nice list here, and I can filter this list here with active locks or all assets. The reason why you can do this is if you want to go, if you're looking for a specific asset, maybe you want to look at the history of events or locks that have been placed on an asset, you can actually filter by all of them. We can get to that. But then when I select one of these assets, I'm now viewing the individual locks that have been applied or are active on this asset itself. And so I can see that here, and then there's history, just the history trail of the asset. So if I had a lock or this was unlocked, I'm still going to see a history on it, but I'm just not going to see it on the active locks. And it's the same concept down here with operators or persons as well. So here I can see all the active locks that admin is responsible for, and there's quite a number. It's all of them that we've created so far. I can unlock these assets from here because I have permissions. I can also do it in the event. I can do them individually if I select this. I'm prompted with an unlock dialog here where I can say, I can select the user who's unlocking it and the actual date that it was unlocked. And then I can type in this work has been completed, and I can then unlock this asset. So once it's done, it turns green. There's an unlock by, there's my reasoning, and the unlock date. I can also edit an event itself. If I come in here, I can, after the fact, add other assets to this event. I can also then go in here and add more locks to an asset that has already been applied. If I have unlocked a lock, it can no longer be modified. So if you have unlocked something and it needs to be relocked, you would then have to add an additional lock on top of it. Because once something's unlocked, it is unlocked for good within this event, but that doesn't mean that you cannot apply the exact same type of lock to that asset from within this event. But if I decide that, this was done in error, I can change this to MCC. I'm going to go in, I'm going to update this event. I'm going to get a lock update history event that kind of gets triggered down here. And if I hover over it, I can actually see the changes that I made and to this lock individually. Or I made a change to say that the local disconnect should actually be MCC. So you can track the value that it was and the value that it was changed to from within this history below, and what asset it was. You can also see that I do also have another event for the unlocked, and that was when I unlocked that previous lock here. So I see some changes here, and these changes are just new values that were set. So the unlocked and unlock date and unlock reason have all been applied. An event can be closed until all locks have been unlocked. And a quicker, easy way to do that is by selecting the unlock all. You'll get the same kind of dialog up here, but you only get one reason text box at the bottom. So here I have all these locks, and if I unlock them, I'm going to unlock them all with the exact same reason. And then I'm going to get a whole bunch of new unlock history events down here. You can also then see if I go by asset with active locks, my list is shrunk down to 2. And that's just because these are done from another event. You can see that event listed here. Once all locks have been unlocked, I can now close this event out. If I go and try and edit this, I can no longer remove assets, which is the same as when those events were locked, but all these are also now locked. So if I want to try and do any more work, I do have to add an additional lock to the page. But once I'm happy this event is closed, all my locks are done, I can then go in here and I can close this event off. So the status over here does change to close. I lose my action items down here. I can still view these items here, but I cannot add any logs or edit this event. From this list here, I can change my status. I can search by closed, or I can only search by open, or I can let them all appear. If I then take an asset, which I would like to take one of these asset IDs, if I search by asset and I look at all assets, and I search for an individual asset that I've closed my locks on, oh, that's because it's a name. I'll have to look at that. I should be able then to look at my assets and look for any previous asset or history events that have been, from the search. Should be able to do the same with the by person. If I go back to admin, you can see I have a whole bunch of history here, but I only actually have 2 active locks, and that's just from my other event that I have created on the event page here, the equipment repair. Does anyone have any questions, thoughts on lockout tagout? Hearing nothing. Anything I maybe forgot, Toronto crew? they've probably already seen me do this demo twice now, so.
No, I think you covered it pretty well, John.
Perfect. So yes, lockout tagout is available as of version 3.2.55. So if that is version or higher that you have, it is available and out there. Just reach out to your support team and they can help you get set up with that. Toronto is currently working through it in a beta step, and you can see there's a few things that I need to look at to just polish up. And there's actually one other option that I added yesterday. That was a ticket that came in, but the lockout tagout portlet can have a default template and you can allow changing or not. So if I do allow changing templates, I can pick more than one template, or if it's disabled like it was, I don't have any other option. It's always going to be the one default template that's available. Great. A few more things that I think are coming up in the future. We'll probably be building some basic reports that can be used. Things we've talked about too are maybe QR codes that can be applied to the equipment itself. That can be scanned for some information, and then maybe some other additional workflow steps to maybe require approval from the supervisor before an equipment is unlocked. Great. Okay, I'll move on to another quick item here, the user permission view. So this was, and this been created, I don't recall who it was. This was actually done by Brian. So this is a new view that will be available in upcoming sims or available in a sim that's noted on that first page. And you can actually look through and determine the access or roles that a user possesses on artifacts from within eRIS. Is that this one? This is no, this is just the user list. So this is the users that are available from within Liferay, which is a different way to display those and what groups are all in at once. So I have a view over here called user information. And so from this list, I can see all the users that I have from within my, this is our test environment. So Darth Vader here, Anakin, is part of operator and user role, and this just is user groups. So this is just a quicker way, maybe than going through some of the Liferay menus, that you can actually use to just navigate through and view user roles and permissions from within the system. The other view that was created is the artifact permission lookup view. This one is a little more complicated, where you can actually see what permissions on eRIS artifacts a current user or active user has or possesses, so what they can see. So if I go to that view, the permission, artifact permissions, this is a representation of the users and what artifacts they have access to. So here the admin user has access to the test map dashboard and all these other dashboards within the system. And here I can see that Erin has some access to the EJ Pareto dashboard. And so here I can actually search for users if I want to determine what kind of access in the system Erin has on dashboards. Maybe I want to only see what permission she has on reports. I can see here, I can also see report books. So this might be a quicker way for you to jump in and see what kind of access your users actually have across items without having to individually jump through all the different configuration pages. This might just be an easier way to kind of view what is available to a given user if you want to see what that is, or if they have any permission at all. And so this is available to be built. This view would have to be built within the system, but the view does exist on eRIS. And if you need help setting that up, again, it would be easiest to contact the support at eRIS Delivers email or the ticketing system. Any questions on those two views before I move on to logbook stuff?
Yes, John. Is it possible to see who is on the scheduled job, for example, especially distribution on the distribution list?
Yeah, so there should be a scheduled job. I probably don't have any scheduled jobs on this system, or they're not
Because that is not a permission, I believe.
Are you talking about who's being emailed?
Yes.
I don't know, Elena, if you can answer that off the top of your head. If that was one of the things that was considered on the scheduled job, is who's actually being emailed. If you want, Mark, I will take that back.
Yes, it is, because it's gonna, for us, like people move from groups, like different pans.
Yeah.
And then we just, it's easier for us to figure out, like, when someone moves from one to another, like how to just quickly find what exactly is emailed to that person and then modify them.
Yeah, I should have some jobs on here, so I will look at that. Sometimes these things need to be just rerun, and you can see I have different permissions type. Ideally, there would be a permission type for email or distribution list that the user has, or the user type would be different. So, okay, yeah, I'll take that back, Mark, for sure.
Thank you.
Anything else for anyone? Okay, great. So logbook shift users, as we transition to a bit more of our logbook feature of things, this is a new list, separate list of users that can only be added to the operator list. These users cannot have no actual permissions on the logbook itself. So if I'm a shift user, I can't go in, I can't view the logbook, I can't create entries on the logbook. However, someone else can use me as an operator from within a shift. So if I go into the default logbook, the shifts and roles, I have an additional shift users. So this Jonathan Clifford user me, the idea here is that this user cannot make entries, view entries, do anything. However, they are available within the shift operator list. So you see the security permissions, I have not been added to this. However, I have been added as a shift user. So from here, if I actually go to the logbook from this list, this user is available and they are noted as shift user only. So this is a new way to allow users who you don't want making entries to maybe be on shift at a different kind of role set. The other new logbook and shift kind of improvement that's been added is logbook roles and having user requirements around those roles. So you can select what users can be used for a specific role on a logbook. Now, I believe this feature is actually still upcoming. If I go back to my first page, it's still upcoming, so it's still in development. However, it's active enough for me to be able to demonstrate it today. So within the logbook editor, there will be a new option list down here that you can then select users for an individual role. So if I only want the administrator or Brian to be the operator in charge, I can specify that, so they will only be available on that list. And then I can also select that the Jonathan Clifford user is very specific to the ORO role. So you'll notice that back here on my actual shift, when I pick the ORO role, I am limited to only John Clifford. But if I switch to the OIC role, this user list transitions, and now I can pick a different set of users from within here. So this will allow you to maybe lock down or maybe prevent some mistakes on what users are available for, or what users should be available for a given role. Does anyone have any questions on those two logbook features? Or any thoughts? Okay, great. Then the last one I wanted to talk about is the logbook user tagging, which I think is something that was mentioned at the partner conference. I don't know what stage it was at that time, but there is a new option from within the logbook itself to actually tag users from within the system. Those users can then also be notified by email or even SMS that their name was used from within a logbook entry. So for this logbook itself, I can just create, no, today's still Wednesday. So I can then create a new entry here. And I can just, you know, below I am tagging. And if I type the @ symbol and 3 characters, then I start to see this pop up for Jonathan Clifford. I can also then see administrator. I think if I type Aaron's name, I'm going to start seeing Aaron. It might be different in the system what your name is. And there's Brian. So then I can actually tag Brian. I'm not going to because I don't want to email him because he's in New Zealand. He probably doesn't want to get an email this late at night. And I will tag Jonathan Clifford. And if I then create this entry, you'll see that this gets tagged. I'm tagging. There's an @ symbol here. Then the screen name also appears beside it from within the entry. It didn't take too long, but 2:35. So I just got an email noting the logbook that I mentioned in the default logbook, and by the user's admin, and the entry was this. So I'm getting notified about an entry that has been created. So this can be used to just bring people's attention to a certain entry that you want, or maybe assign tasks, however your logbook's being used. The SMS does require some use with Twilio or Twilio service, and that stuff can be set up. We haven't had anyone request or go for that, but if you do on SMS, let us know and we'll work together to try and make sure that that works, whether it's an account set up by partner or an account set by us, and then figuring out how the SMS is being paid for, because there is an additional charge per text message that's being sent out. Great. I think that's all the features I had to go over. If anyone has anything else they want to go over on these topics, or we can do that. Otherwise, we can wrap up about 8 minutes early. Okay, great. Nothing in the chat. Okay. Well, thanks everyone. Have a good rest of your day. And if you have any questions, as always, reach out, support at eRIS Delivers, and we'll try and get back to you as soon as we can. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.